Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the session. I'm Ethan, the CEO of Latchel here. And today I've got Jonathan Cook and Bryan Jenkins from AHI Properties. As you all already know, at Latchel, we handle 24/7 maintenance coordination for property managers so you can focus on more important things like growing your business. When we first started Latchel, we had actually talked about starting a property management company. We consulted with a bunch and said, this sounds like a lot to tackle. Why don't we just handle maintenance? So we started with maintenance.
Oh, it's so easy.
A little bit easier than taking the whole package on, right? But that's what you guys have done at AHI Properties, one of the biggest property management companies in Alabama. Really excited to dive into how you created your company, where you're at right now. But maybe we can start just giving our audience some background on AHI. Can you tell us a little bit about the company, where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey? How many doors are you at, and when did you get started?
Well, let's say I'll give you the short version of it because we're an odd animal, if you will. We actually sprung off of a corporate housing company, AHI Corporate Housing, which is doing corporate housing, headquartered here out of Birmingham, operates 6 states and 12 marketplaces. Do about 2,000 corporate apartments and been doing it since 1990. So what happened and how properties kind of kicked off was late 90s, our corporate clients were moving fewer people around for longer periods of time. So with that, they had longer lease terms that they wanted to do, and they wanted houses versus corporate apartments. So we first got into the business starting in 2000. We started buying our own portfolio, like A-class properties for corporate leaseback. Between 2000 and mid-2003, we purchased 52 Class A properties for corporate leasebacks of 3 to 5 years. And then a local real estate company here that was, it's now a Berkshire Hathaway company based out of Birmingham, was statewide, and they had a rental division, which was small, actually, 109 properties, but they approached us because of all the business we did with their relocation department and asked if we would be interested in purchasing it. They were ready to get out of the property management business, which, and I'll say this for all the property managers out there, the business that we acquired actually operated out of a Rolodex box and index cards. And then they did have an accounting department through the real estate platform. So, but that's how they did their record keeping. There was nothing electronic about it. They just had an email, and then they had, just their accounting software, which was business based and not anything outward facing toward tenant or owner client.
Now, Bryan, I will say, operating out of a Rolodex box, realistically, if you just get started and you don't know what you're doing, that's perfectly understandable why they did that. Is all I'm saying, Bryan.
But when you're a multi-million-dollar real estate company, you think you'd be a little more protected.
I'm just saying, if I was starting one, I would be all about a Rolodex box right this minute.
So January 1 of 2004, we actually went live to other people's properties as well as our own portfolio. We had 161 properties under management. I think of that 109 we've taken in, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. I think I have 9 of those left, and they were all in Birmingham. So we have grown organically since then. I've done one small acquisition outside of that for less than 50 units. Everything else has been organic growth, and we are now managing just under 1,200 single-family homes in 5 marketplaces. So we're in Huntsville, Alabama. Well, 4 Alabama marketplaces: Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Mobile, as well as Oklahoma City. So I know that seems a bit odd, but so our business model and growth plan is the 12 offices I mentioned earlier with corporate housing. They have brick and mortar locations. So what we try is, once we get client interest in those marketplaces, we allow the interest to drive us to those markets because we already have a lot of the overhead knocked out with brick and mortar office space. So then we just bring in the equipment, the systems, hire local talent, and we hit the ground running.
Wow, that's awesome. So you have 1,200 single-family home you're managing across these 6 different territories, and that's alongside these multifamily properties?
Yeah, that's in addition to the multifamily. My wife runs our corporate housing division, and they're in the 6 states. We're only in 2 states and 5 locations. So we're a little bit behind on the growth curve, but we're doing pretty well.
Well,
Look, if someone wants to buy a portfolio in one of those places, we'll move and manage them.
Awesome.
But you bring us something more than 1 or 2.
And when did you start doing single family? That was in 2004?
When did we start doing what? I'm sorry.
Single family?
Well, we managed our own single family from late 2000 to 2003, and then we were approached in last quarter 2003 where we started picking up other people's assets, and we just realized, you know what?
Wow.
My partner's always been he's the money man, and he's always, hey, let's use other people's money. So that's always been. That's been a good option for us, using other people's money to make profit and then turn around and reinvest our own money to expand even further. So we continually buy properties. I'm in the process. We closed one yesterday. Closed on a big A-class $437,000 house on Tuesday. And we've done a corporate leaseback for 3 years. We're exceeding the 1% rule on return, so we're doing great on that. So we do that for the right corporate clients, for the right terms and right leaseback. But that's kind of where we blend our products a bit, where we'll do the management, we'll purchase, and then we'll do that with other people's homes too, where we'll create corporate rental environments. And I wish we had a walk around camera, because like 2/3 of our building, which is close to 15,000 square feet here in Birmingham, is warehouse. It's all racked out, commercial laundry.
It's nuts.
It's pretty nuts. It's mind blowing until you see it. So we have a lot of working parts. Property management side of the house, I've got 22 team members, and then total company employees, we have 96 employees across our platform.
I want to say, I feel like it bears repeating that you're exceeding a 1% rule on a $430,000 house. I know
that's unfurnished, by the way. So
we're going to dig into
I'm just saying
that.
That's impressive.
But I want to dig into everything you've actually just talked about. But before we do, I'd love to hear a little bit about each of your backgrounds personally. Have you always been in real estate and property management? Did you start somewhere else? And Bryan, maybe we can start with you and then jump over to you, Jonathan.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So I'm a bit of a anomaly, I think. So I went straight out of high school into the military, spent 9 years between the Army, Navy first, and then Army. So I'm a dual branch service guy. Ended up, I worked on jets. Yeah, that's what the picture's behind me.
Yeah.
Worked on jets in the Navy, worked on F-18s. And then when I transitioned out of the Navy into the Army, I actually became an airborne medic, combat medic, and went on to get my EMT and paramedic license while I was in service. And along the way, I went back to school, got my degree in biblical theology. And so here I am being a property manager. So that all makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like a natural progression.
Yeah. So, so I've been in property management.
Who would question that?
I've been in property management since 2000. And really with me, was it love at first sight? I'm a problem solver. That's why I like property management. And I'm truly one of these weird guys that loves it, and come to work every day. It's a different challenge, and there's highs and lows, but ultimately I've been doing it for 19 years. I did it 10 years, 11 years pretty much without NARPM. Found NARPM, and NARPM changed our business 360 degrees. I mean, it spun us completely around and then put us back on track. So, and that has been it's really been business life changing. We've turned around, and especially after NARPM rolled out their company memberships a couple of years ago, I've got every member of my team as a member of NARPM, plugging into the education, and we really just invest in that 100%. I really want our managers to be well educated and best in class operators is our focus.
Awesome. And did you get into, we'll get into that transition to NARPM a little bit later. I'm curious though, when you went into property management in 2000, how did you approach that? Did you work with another company, or did you say, I'm going to start my own?
No, I got out in '90. I got out of the military in 1996 and worked for a corporate housing company for a couple of years. And then I actually went off and partnered with a gentleman that used to be one of three partners of this business originally, and formed a residential, commercial, janitorial, pressure wash, and window cleaning business that we had about 25 employees. So we were competing with most of your retail cleaning services and janitorial and such. From that, I actually sold that off to the partner. Went back home. I'd had a family member pass away. I'm originally from West Virginia, and my parents have been entrepreneurs since my junior year of high school, and I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but it's been a while. But my parents have always worked together, and I know it takes a special relationship, and my wife and I actually work together here. She's been with AHI on the corporate housing side, in which we're not partnered, but she's been working with my partner on the property side for 30 years this August. And I've been invested a total of 21 years with this particular company. And how I got it, when I had gone home, I reached back out to one of the partners, just checking in, and he's like, "Hey, if you're not doing anything, why don't you come back to Alabama and help us start a real estate platform? We want to start buying some property." So that's how all the AHI Properties got its start. And I still remember, this is a real quick fun story, was that approach that came from the real estate company asking us if we were interested in acquiring them. My partner, I wasn't a partner at the time, but he came to me and he's like, he said, "I'm going to leave this up to you." And it was just me and my now maintenance supervisor, who's still with me. And we talked about it, Philip and I did. And, I said, "Philip, why don't we think about this over the weekend? We'll reconvene on Monday and we'll give our decision to Ralph." So we came in on Monday and it's like, you know what, why not? So let's give it a shot. So we made the decision and plunged right into it. Really did not have a clue what we were doing. And I think the first 90 days, I didn't try to market anything. I just tried to get my hands on the horns of the steer that we had just landed and try to get that under control and just hire, we hired an office manager. So it was a 3-person team kind of going through that 161 properties, which we had our piece already down pat. But just if you can imagine, if you're going through an acquisition, owners are a little anxious about the new management company they know nothing about. Sure. And after about a month, my partner and I were coming back from lunch and came up the top of the stairs. Receptionist was at lunch. They'd gone on a mail run. All of our mail sitting on the desk, and one of the homeowners that we had just acquired was kind of rifling through our mail. And it's like, "Excuse me, can I help you?" So
that sounds like some kind of breach of something there.
Yeah, so they're probably looking for a check for them.
We looked at each other after she left and goes, "This not renew that one."
Wow.
So that's my story. And Jonathan, the fun thing about our company is we have, trying to remember if we have 3 or 4 husband-wife teams working in our company.
4, I think.
4. So Jonathan is one of them. We actually have 3 in Birmingham.
Yeah, just 3.
So just in our main office. So it sounds a little incestual, but it's really not.
It's nepotistic.
Yeah, but that's the environment we try to foster is long-term employees, career-oriented, family atmosphere, because our philosophy is we spend more time together than we do with our families. So
unless we're here and you're married to somebody that works in the building, right. And then you just happen to spend all your time with your wife, like I do.
And I learned that from my parents. That takes a special relationship.
Sure does.
If you think about anybody the majority of my friends are like, "Man, I couldn't work with my wife. I think I'd strangle her," and vice versa.
I worry Katie's going to strangle me from time to time, bro. Just a little bit.
But the thing is, the reality of it is, and my wife and I both running operations, it gives us a certain amount of insight into one another as to what kind of day we've had or what's going on. Yeah. But at the same time, we know when to shut that off and have us time and not just be all consumed by work. So that's that balance.
Yeah, there's at Latchel, a lot of people don't know this, but Will, who's usually on the show, he's not here. I mentioned this before we started. He's actually at a baby appointment right now, due in August, sometime in August. I think it's August 8th, if I remember right. His wife actually worked with us for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And it is interesting to have like that dynamic. I saw it in them working together, 8 hours, 10 hours. We're a startup. I'm sure you've had days like this. You go 12, 14-hour days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then, you're back at home.
We haven't started up in a long time, but from time to time, sometimes you need a 12-hour day.
You do sometimes. That's right.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a 12-hour day to just escape from whatever is going to happen at home when you get back. So,
yeah. Well, I'll say, I've had the privilege of, my kids are now 21 to 28. I've got 4 of them. I've got one married. I had my first grandchild in March, little baby boy.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm a grandfather, and I'm the oldest of my brothers, so I'm okay with that. And then my oldest son is actually getting married in October, which is going to make me be late to National Convention for NARPM, but I think they're going to give me a pass on that, so I won't be in until Wednesday.
I think you deserve a pass there.
And I think I've got a class scheduled to teach on Thursday, which they swapped around for me so I could get that accomplished. So, yeah, so that's my fun story, but I don't want to take away from your. So give us your story.
Your story is much more impressive.
only in your eyes. So.
Well, I mean, Bryan has been doing property management as long as I have been like an adult. So that's pretty impressive.
That makes me feel quite old. I just want to say.
Just saying.
Well, let's take it as a compliment.
You should. When I grew up in real estate, which is kind of weird to be a kid that just knows as much about real estate as my life trajectory took me on. My mom and my stepdad, they've been in real estate since I was like 5 years old, like for real. And so my mother's best friend is a real estate broker. My stepdad was a real estate broker. They owned a company. It was just real estate all the time. It was just constantly going out, being in real estate, but it was always on the sales side. I mean, it was just the real estate sales side of it forever. And then when I graduated high school, it just became like that was the path that was going to make probably the most sense. And I'd moved down. I was in Auburn. When I was in college, I went down there, and it was that's a little bit different than Birmingham. And I was in Auburn and started selling cars when I was 19 years old. I thought that'd be fun. I can do that. So that was my very first like real adult job. Was I started selling cars. I figured, how hard can it be? I got into sales. Moved back up to Birmingham when I had my first son, or my only son, my first child. We moved back up to Birmingham because this is where I'm from. I grew up in Birmingham. I've been here my whole life. And so we moved back up here to be closer to family. And I was like, well, I guess real estate, I don't want to sell cars in Birmingham. Now that I have a kid, I need to be at home. Because when you're selling cars, sometimes those 12, 14-hour days, that was happening. And I didn't realize that was going to happen way more when I was in real estate. But I had babies, so I got into real estate. I was the youngest realtor in the state when I got my license, so that was neat for about 5 minutes until someone else got their license, I'm sure. But I was in real estate. It was just sales, and I'd sold a good bit of homes in that first year, and then 2008 happened in my second year. That was when Alabama started to really hit that hard real estate drop. 2009, 2010 is probably when it hit the bottom. But I had just got my license in the middle of 2007, and that first year was great. Everything was wonderful. And then it just stopped. Real estate just stopped being something that I could do with a new family, and it makes sense. So it went from selling houses, listing houses, to like I had to find some little niche, and I found investors. Found investors in just local investors that were buying, let's go buy this block of this city here. And I'm like, you want to buy a block?
I had so many forklifts.
They would buy like 10 or 15 homes and still only spend like $200,000. And so like I was just still making just barely enough to like actually survive on those commission checks. It was fun. But I got the
good experience.
It was very good experience. But it got me
character.
Sure did. But it gave me that, I understood how investors started working. I understood how their minds worked. And I got really good at finding ones that are like, this one is going to work, even though it doesn't make sense right this second. Let's look at these. Why is this one going to work? And I started understanding what made a good property to invest in, what made a good thing to spend money on. Even when the real estate market is crashing, how can you invest in real estate when nothing is selling? Oh, you rent properties. Clearly, that's how you do it. You buy a property and you put a tenant in there. Luckily, like I said, my family was in real estate, and my mom owned some large number of homes herself. My mother and my stepdad, they owned a lot of property, and they were self-managing, and they're like, hey, you're right now real estate's tanked. You can be our property manager, along with other side jobs that I was working, just trying to stay afloat. Sure. So I mean, I would go around and pick up rent checks and take complaints from tenants and kind of understand part of what property management was. Not everything, certainly not everything, but just kind of dipping my toe in it, trying to understand it. And it was not. I mean, it couldn't have been more than maybe 10 properties at the most, maybe 12. I don't remember exactly, but it was not a ton. It was a very small amount of properties compared to what we handle right this minute. And so it became like just something that I halfway understood, and got a good feel for it. Then my wife ended up working here at AHI, and she works for Bryan's partner, Ralph. And she, I'd come to the Christmas party, probably 3 or 4 years in a row? Probably 4 years I'd come to the Christmas party.
Was that how you two first met, at one of the Christmas parties?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, I was coming to the Christmas party anyway. I was like, hey, Bryan, what's going on?
Yeah.
He's like, not much. How's it going? I'm like, I'm trying to list these houses, and man, it's rough business. And finally I was like, hey, Bryan, why don't we, what do you think about me coming and working for AHI? And he's like, yeah, why didn't you ask? It's like, well, I just did. And so I've been working at AHI since. I mean, that's pretty seamlessly how it went.
That's awesome.
And since then, coming into AHI, it became this understanding how to operate for a property as a property manager for a very small amount of people, when it's just like maybe 1 or 2 owners, which is what I had experienced, or helping investors find some homes. But again, just like having 1 or 2 clients bringing me stuff to do. To now, all right, out of our 1,100 homes, Bryan, how many owner clients do you think we have?
We have about just a little under 500 owners. So it went from, hey, talk to these 2 people about making decisions and helping them and going and picking up rent checks, to, hey, there's 500 people that need you right now. Okay. Not to mention all the potential new business coming in because of your position.
My position, I'm business development. So my entire job is based off of bringing new people into Birmingham, helping find new business that wants us to manage their properties. And so I'm very glad and very lucky that I have the team that I have here at AHI, because it becomes there's so many things, and I can understand how anybody just starting to do this, I can understand how overwhelmed it can be. Like, well, I've got to go get those rent checks, and I've got to make sure that the house is maintained, and I've got to make sure that the tenant is also paying on time, and then they're having complaints about maintenance issues, and then what else do I have to do? Oh, then I have to go find a new person that wants to, let me manage their properties. All of that at once. If you're doing that all by yourself, kudos, good job. I'm super impressed.
It's not very scalable, but
it's not very scalable, but good job. I'm super impressed. We have this team, which is literally how I do my job. I'll talk to people, hey, why do I need AHI to manage my properties? I'm like, everyone here but me, basically. But, I'm good at pitching everyone else in this office because they're all amazing. And they do all those, they handle all those things you don't think about, which I just kind of stumbled. I would learn something new with my old property management situation. Like, if somebody didn't pay on time, it'd be like the first time that had ever happened. My mother had purchased this tiny little C-class property in Montevallo, which is like a poor little area near a college town, but it was a $40,000 property. And like the first time that tenant didn't pay, I was like,
now what?
What? She didn't pay. I knocked on the door. I was like, hey, I need your rent check. And she was like, I don't have it. I was like, well, I need it. And she's like, I don't have it. I was young or younger. I didn't know what to do when that happened. It's just when you haven't run into a situation, not knowing what to do, and it's the first time that happens. If you're by yourself, that's overwhelming. Here, I run into situations I've never heard of. For instance, hey, we've got a German client that's in Germany, and we need to mail something to Germany. I'm like, I've never mailed anything to Germany. Luckily, he's been a client here for way longer than I've been here, so everybody already knows how to send him a letter or whatever. Right. So it's like, oh, this is how you do that. This is how you talk to this person. This is how this handled, because we have this giant, or not giant, it's pretty big. We have this team that just can help me when I've run into something that I don't know how to do. And we all everyone can pitch ideas back and forth about new things and where something's going. Hey, what should we market this property for? We can all ask.
Do you think there's a right time for a startup property management company to look for first hire?
I do. I think, I've kind of been there myself, because when it was, and this is when it was just Philip and I, and trying to kick off with, when it was, 52 of our own properties, the two of us handled it seamlessly. I could have handled that probably by myself, but it made it a heck of a lot easier with the second person. And there's kind of an industry standard, if you will, to say that, in a really well-run organization, if you're all in one location, on average about 75 houses per property manager is what you're going to look at, and being like team member or whatever. Yeah. Because you can structure departmentally, or you can structure by portfolio, like a property management model, to where there's a property manager, maybe an assistant manager, which we have some of our outside offices structured that way. But like our larger scale office here, in which we manage over 500 properties from, this one's set up to where we have leasing, we have tenant relations, investor relations, business development, maintenance, coordination, and then we have administrative support. So those things, I would say your scale needs to be anywhere between 50 to 75. 50 is probably overstaffed, and that's about where we're at, just a little above that. But the reason for that is primarily because we have to duplicate certain positions, because we have 5 brick and mortar locations. So we're having, gotcha, because of our real estate laws and such, we have to have qualifying brokers in each of those locations. And, and so you're duplicating a lot of your workforce. So, but ideally, that standard's about 2 years old, if I remember correctly, but it was to be fit within that 50 to 75 per person on your staff as a good average.
For someone that's like a solo business owner, solo broker, getting started, they're ramping up, they hit 50 properties maybe, and they're solo still. Is there like a position that they should look to as like the first hire?
First hire. So normally what we do in our outside offices, because we've started small in some cases. So Oklahoma City is a prime example. We started with 22 properties, one client, and went out there. I hired one property manager, which was going to be my lead, even as we grew the marketplace. And so we rocked through a year, and at the end of the year, we closed another large portfolio of 89 properties. So then all of a sudden,
it's a ramp up right there, man.
Broke 100 properties.
Yeah, that's like 4x overnight.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then we immediately closed another one in the month of January, and another small one in February. So then all of a sudden, we're above 160 properties under management, and we're hiring staff rapidly. But my number 2 position hire was an assistant property manager. And what that looks like with 2, but we rapidly got to the 3rd position, because I wanted 3 people on that, basically from 150, ramp it up to 2 to 210, and then I'll start looking for my 4th as we continue to grow. But the second position, and kind of breaking it apart, because when I started this location, I was signing owners and leasing properties and handling all the admin and financial side of it. And then my first hire was maintenance coordinator who came on with me. Philip took all the maintenance requests, handled all of our contractor relationships and negotiations and such. So that worked out well, but we rapidly determined, hey, we need a 3rd person. which in our case back in that day ended up being an office manager that handled administrative and handled the financial piece of it. And then we had the luxury of having a CPA on staff here, and so we were working with the CPA when it became owner draw. I just remember those painful days, server-based technology. I mean, an owner draw day was a full day for your full team. Now, I mean, it's literally, you go through the entire process in a couple of hours and 3 or 4 clicks through the software, and it's usually me and one other person, and it's really not nearly as nerve-wracking as it used to be. And we can pump out all of our payments for our vendors, our management company, and our owners just in, like I said, just within the span of a couple of hours.
So I kind of want to get into the growth side, especially like for a startup, and going from 22 to 89 and somehow making that work and not breaking, and then being at 160 just another few months later is insane. Who was focusing on the growth? And like maybe Jonathan, you can talk a little bit about how do you actually approach growth? How do you bring in new units into the company?
Well, I think there's more than one way to look at it.
Well, there's more than one approach. That's,
certainly.
We deploy several different strategies, and in the end, they're all feeding business into you.
If you make a funnel of where can you get business from, if you just funnel everything, eventually have everything land in there, and it's all entirely relationship based. That's how you have to do it. You have to prove yourself and build the relationship to where people will send you business. I think the number one most important way to handle that is NARPM. I mean, we're NARPM members, and NARPM is one of the few organizations I've ever been a part of that has the kind of coordination and cooperation that I see in NARPM. Because if, metaphorically, or for instance, if somebody had a property, if one of our clients called me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a property in North Carolina." We don't have an office in North Carolina, but I know 3 people off the top of my head that I would go, "Oh,
all day long,
call them." I mean, I've got their phone number in my cell phone. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's just call. Hey, here you go. I can text you their cell phone. I can just share you their cell phone number. Call this person and get it handled. And the reason that we know these people is because of NARPM.
Yeah,
that organization gets you in touch with these other people, and if you're in NARPM, you're actually trying to better yourself anyways. It's
it's lifting the level of the profession across the board, and that's NARPM in its whole. I mean, it's sharing the best ideas, best practices, education pieces, serving together. I always say every time I go to a NARPM event, whether it's chapter or national level, it's like a family reunion. Everybody knows you by first name, and there's 6,000 members. It's not a huge organization. We are trying to grow, but I mean, it's still 6,000 members, and I've only been in it since 2011, October 2011, and I've got friends all across the country, and I can dial them up, like Jonathan said, or text many of them, and just ask them what they feel, based on this situation, what would be your advice to me? And I alluded to it earlier in the podcast that, I managed for 10 years and I always felt like I had to learn from my own mistakes, as painful as that was. And we give the analogy of beating your head against the door jam because that's what it felt like sometimes. But I went to the first event in Dallas, and I haven't missed a national event since then. But I went to that event, and immediately the first thing that just stood out to me was just the networking, and then the education pieces, and then the after education networking, and where people were sharing specific examples on what they were doing and how it was working for them, and how do you implement it? I mean, if you're managing several hundred properties, how do you implement that? What timelines do you look at, and that sort of thing? So that's where everybody's helpful. And it's not just dialing them up. They even have a couple of different listservs for property managers at large. They have another one for broker owners. So you can pitch questions out there and get immediate responses from across the country. And that's a really big value add for folks that are growing their business and trying to sort out best practices. build additional income streams. Gosh, I can't tell you.
Well, that's also how you can make those connections for if somebody else needs, wherever your listeners are, if you're just getting started, if you happen to be filling a niche that someone else doesn't, but they know that you're a NARPA member. The good thing about the reason that I refer to NARPA members if it's something out of our expertise is because I know what's backing them up. I know that they're not just, I'm not going to refer one of my clients to someone who's going to drop the ball. I mean, and so being a NARPA member, it kind of gives you a little bit of clout. And starting that, if you're looking to build business, being a NARPA member, that's step one. And then from that, it becomes what do you want your niche to be? What is your niche? Are you the guy that's going to take, if you're willing to do C-class properties, working with government subsidized housing and okay, I'm willing to start. That's where I want to start. And hey, I'm going to dig through that stuff.
Managers, I think a lot of property managers and just business owners, they early on, they're willing to just take anything.
Exactly.
And you're talking about like building the niche. Like, how do you balance those two things? Like, I want to take business, I want to make money. Like, if you're willing to work with me, come on in.
And that's the balance, because early on, that was my approach in taking, I don't want to say everything, but because we were a little different just because we took on the AHI name to run with the corporate housing reputation that's been around for a while. So we had a standard, if you will. We wanted to maintain a reputation within our corporate environment in all our marketplaces. So what we initially did, though, I was taking, I took clients that really had no clue what they were doing as a property owner, and they really weren't investors. They were just accidental landlords. We were taking those in primarily, especially after 07, 08 happened. And then we had to be creative, and it was like, okay, you have to safeguard against people coming in that they're past due on their mortgage 4 or 5 months. They're going to want you to get this house rented out, take the rent check and run, basically. So safeguarding against those type of nuances and just realizing who we were. And then what we tried to focus on was getting ourselves from about 2009 to about 2015, focused on A and B class properties and being that corporate level rental. And I don't want to say just, that's a misleading statement, because fully furnished corporate leasebacks that we do, that only represents about 3 to 4% of our inventory, depending on time of year.
Would you even say any of those are B class realistically?
Few.
Okay.
We even have, so we have the first 3 C-class properties I've ever done corporate rental.
That's new.
2 years. So for the last 2 years, that's an interesting story. But it works. I never thought it would. But so back in 15, Ralph and I decided to really focus in on the diversity of our portfolio, because we knew there would come a time when the sales market would rebound and that people would start to sell. Okay, so all these accidental landlords, which made up the largest part of our ownership in our client base, they would start to sell, and then we would start to lose inventory. And if we only focused on those, where were we going to go to get new inventory?
Because we're seeing that now. We
are seeing it, and we've been seeing it. I mean, our industry's been seeing it for a couple of years now. So, and that's the feedback you get from other NARPA members across the country. It's like, are you losing inventory because your owners are selling? And are you able to participate in that as a brokerage service, that sort of thing? So we actually started attending a couple different conference events. So IMN was one of them, and 5 Star was the second one. And we started focusing in on funds and small REITs, and just identifying with them in our marketplaces and really courting to that crowd of clientele. And after attending a few of the events and having some networking opportunities and getting some interviews, we actually were able to land some business, and that started changing the tide. So now we're, while we still have a great mix of AB properties, we're probably 40 to 45% C-class properties now.
Wow.
To where we've diversified out, and we're doing some of the Section 8. Now the large investors are trying to stick with a formula of about 15% of their total investment portfolio be Section 8, no more than that. So we try to help with that. But managing Section 8, managing standard C class, and then of course the B and A classes, which you have different options of going corporate rental or just standardized rental there. And we're actually on the cuff of because of our corporate housing business model, and we have all the tools in place. We're now looking into launching basically an Airbnb model because we've had some success.
Awesome. And I'm super excited about it.
And I've actually got some.
I'm super excited about it. It's the most exciting thing that's happened.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of NARPA members that have been doing it successfully for about a year now. Just want to get some track record under their belt so they can share some stories with me. But like I said, we do a lot of turns. Our corporate housing average stays 60 days. So we're doing a lot of turnover, inventory, inspections in between tenants, make readies. So we've got those systems in place in all of our markets. So it's just a matter of deploying those for Airbnb structures. So it's kind of exciting. And my advice personally on growth would be, we do a good job of balancing it out, and we've created a lot of new things, especially after Jonathan came on board. And I felt like I had somebody that I could partner with and actually make some of my visions work. And then
Thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So
nice job, Jonathan.
Yeah, he's done a nice job. So we've obtained some clients that have actually been doing. We're helping them with some rehab work, for buy and hold strategy, investor to investor sales strategy, or buy and retail resale after rehab. So we have a lot of different strategies going on right now, and it's all great stuff. And back to his funnel thing. So it's not, we go to different places. We plug into investment networks, partner with companies like, we throw it around a lot, but Roofstock,
man, they're great.
Listing service for us.
Real estate.
Yeah, just coming alongside a lot of our affiliates, like you guys that are affiliated with NARPM and NARPM members, and learning about it, just staying more or less cutting edge, because it really truly blows my mind if I look back at 2010 and how property management was in 2010 to where it is today.
Yeah.
I know it seems like property management's been around forever, but I can assure you the technology pieces that have come alongside, property management are allowing companies like us to scale and provide consistent product across all of our platforms.
The scalability becomes exponential when you have cloud-based software. It makes it to where I can do one thing in my office at my desk, and our Oklahoma office can see it. Our Huntsville office can see it as soon as I'm done. And so I can make a template and say, hey, this is how we're going to handle this situation. Here you go. Plug in an address and a name. Be done with it.
Yeah, our success in multiple markets is quite simply, we have policies and procedures, obviously, but I use them as a guardrail system, and I allow each marketplace to have their own individual flavor. So they just stay within the guardrails, and the qualifying brokers run the operation. And there are certain things tied into law or financial. We're pretty straightforward, black and white on those. But outside of that, my brokers have a lot of flexibility to get the job done. And at the end of the day, they're doing it our way, and we're providing consistent payment reporting.
Can you give some examples of the guardrails? Because a lot of of our customers at Latchel talk about expanding to new markets. It's one of the reasons a lot of our customers even use us, so it's easier to expand. And I think they'd really benefit if hearing from you, like, what are the guide rails you set out going into new markets and expanding, and then what flexibility is there?
Probably a very easy one would be our policy on late payments. So our policy on late payment, and I always give broker level approval is required. So that puts them at ease. They know their backside's covered, right? And then it's on the broker at that point. But basically what we allow as a company standard is rents due on the third with our company. After the third, it's a 10% late fee. For the first time offender, we authorize our operators to waive the late fee one time only. And if there's another circumstance that comes up after that, that requires broker level approval to override that. And then my brokers have to answer to us as to why they did that. And I just want to, the big thing with that is we just want to be careful we're protecting ourselves potentially for any fair housing violations or anything where we're treating anybody in a different manner. But all my brokers, they're trained on a different level to realize and risk manage that, where their staff knows that they've got the flexibility to stay within the guardrails of, hey, I can give a one-time, get out of jail free card. So
do you have like a playbook that brokers and agents read?
Well, what we have is I have itemized policies, and every time we hire somebody new, what I do with that is I've got them on our server. We're a server-based company, but also download a memory stick for them, and we have all of our procedures and policies on that.
Awesome.
So that's part of their
Did you build those from scratch?
We did actually. Painfully, it was NARPM that inspired me to do that, and what inspired me really was the challenge to systemize our business so that at the end of the day, if we wanted to hang it up and retire and get out of the business and sell off, we would have a marketable company to sell, not just a book of management business, but a complete business of systems and the company and the brand. And that's what we focused on. And quite honestly, it always sounded like a daunting task, but really what got me moving was I had a college intern working in here for me for the summer. And I took a weekend and I went through and I wrote out all the processes I could possibly think of within our business. Yeah. And I said, and it was Mary Hannah. So I said, Mary Hannah, I want you to go around, and I wrote out the person's name beside the process. I said, I want you to schedule a time to sit down with them, interview them, and get them to document this process out for you. I then want you to turn around and put it in this Word format and save it on a memory stick. So she did all that for me throughout the summer. And it really didn't take her the entire summer. It was really about a 1 month project. By the time you work out everybody's schedules and all that, and then bring it back to me so I could review it, and then we go back to them with additional questions and fine tune it a little bit. But the thing to remember is that's always been drilled into my head. They're living, breathing documents. So as things change, you need to be able to adapt those documents. And when you do that, you have to make your staff aware.
Because was that before DocuSign that you did that originally?
No, I had DocuSign at the time. Yeah. So.
I can remember doing real estate before DocuSign, and that was electronic signatures were not like a thing that you could do.
Yeah, that was probably a big pain in the butt.
Oh, man.
And the other thing was, think about when you hire somebody in, you don't want all the knowledge to be up here, and then if they ever leave you, all the knowledge goes with them. Yeah. You want it proceduralized so you can bring the next person in. And really, we talked about the software companies. Software companies have done a great job of that. They've got that step by step. You watch this block for this module of interaction with the software, and you watch the next one. And then for certain roles, you can say do modules 1, 3, 5, and 7, because that's pertinent to your role. You don't necessarily need to know everything about the software and all that it does, but you need to know what's in your lane. So, so that works out pretty well.
Awesome. I'm kind of curious, like as you were expanding and growing, even early on, were there certain hurdles that you had to figure out how to overcome? Like what were the hurdles you ran into?
Wow.
Is this just in bringing new business, or is this just in running what business you have?
No, it could be either one. If you hit a hurdle, like in figuring out how to get new business, let's talk about that. If you hit like a scaling problem where you were growing so fast that things just started breaking, let's talk about that.
I will say this as far as new business goes. Once we started taking on national investors and taking these people that were coming in through.
Yeah, let me add one thing. Go ahead. I'm going to pause you real quick. So the one thing I want to add is we have an internal insurance agency in-house.
That's huge.
Which was a game changer in our business development model. So I'll let Jason, Jason's on my mind. He's downstairs.
He's downstairs. He's our insurance guy.
I'll let Jonathan keep on going.
Well, the insurance part, that's huge, being able to, because I just had an instance today where a guy's insurance wasn't going to cover a vacant property because it's his insurance. It's his homeowner's insurance. I'm like, call ours. Why
they don't have that requirement.
Exactly. But one of the things that I noticed when I first started taking in business here, and it was everybody calling, because AHI has been a pretty big staple in Alabama and Birmingham way before I was here. And so I'm coming in, and it's everybody hey, I need you to manage my property. I need you to manage my property. I need you to manage my property. And at first, if you just take all those in, what ends up happening is a lot of those properties are either spread out too far because you just want to take in the business. You think that's your job, is just taking the business. That's the smartest thing, is just to take in the business. But then you end up taking properties that, if you can't actually go to the property or have someone lay eyes on the property and you don't know that it's maintained to a certain level, it just becomes hard to set an expectation with an owner when they buy a property and they're like, okay, I need you to manage this property, but they've never seen it. If they're buying it from another state and they're buying it basically over the internet, they're virtually investing in real estate. They've never seen it, so they don't know what information to tell you. This is going to be an issue. This is going to be an issue. This is going to be an issue. So watch those items. If they're just saying, hey, I bought this property, I close on it today, I need you to manage my property, and they've never seen it, and you've never seen it, you have an address, and of course you can pull it up on the internet and go, okay, I know about what it should rent for. I mean, I have an idea, without getting out there to the property. If you just take in everything, that's what I noticed, is if you just take in everything, the ones that are going to cause you the most trouble are the ones, they're going to cause you a lot of trouble, and they're not actually going to be worth it. If I'm making, let's just say 10%,
have to filter what you're going to take in.
If I'm making 10% on a $600 a month rental, that's $60. But if it takes me $45 to drive out there, and I have to drive out there every few days because, well, I need you to go check this, I need you to go check that, I need you to go, it's literally not worth it. It's not fiscally responsible. And then that client isn't going to be happy because you won't be able to have time to do it. That tenant, that if you ever do place one, it's not going to be happy because it's hard to get to. And it means, as much as it means enough to you that your name is on that property, you want it to do well, you want to take care of that client, it's in a difficult spot to get to, or if it's just whatever kind of issues it is, if the property already has issues when you take it in,
so
it just becomes a hassle.
How do you approach getting to those new areas then? Do you wait until you have like a large portfolio where you could support putting someone like in the area?
Well, we've done it both ways. Yeah. I've done small, medium, large portfolios. My first expansion, my first two expansions, the first one was Mobile, and we went there with 75 properties. We started Huntsville next with 10 properties. And then I've started Montgomery with 168 properties. And then we started Oklahoma with 22. So we're kind of all over the board. But the ideal is to look at the marketplace, see if it makes sense for your growth strategy. Yeah. Because ultimately you don't want to put all your eggs in the one basket with the large client, because something happens with the large client, which I've had a close friend of mine in Narpin that went through that, lost 2/3 of her business size overnight, had to close one of her two locations, and she still survives today and is growing again. But she learned a painful lesson, had to let staff go, and those are painful moments. So you want to make sure it makes sense. You want to make sure you've done your research on the marketplace to include the employment base, the area, the level of expertise in property management that you can tap into and hire, because it's all going to come down to your local expert. And that, if you've got somebody that knows the marketplace and knows property management, you can be successful. You can train them on how you go about doing that, but you need that base knowledge and you need that base expertise.
So you've mentioned NARPM a lot. And you've also mentioned that was a turning point when you joined NARPM.
Well, my current role with NARPM, right? So I'm a member.
No, I don't.
So I'm
I can make a guess, but
yeah. Well, I am the National Member Services Committee Chair. So I work and try to entice members once they join to remain in NARPM, go for their designations, become professional property managers, as well as retain those that are not really active, try to figure out ways for chapters and national level membership to engage. So I've been doing that. This is my second year in a 2-year term in that role. We don't have a chapter in Alabama. We kind of talked about this summit we put on a couple of weeks ago. So we're trying to trigger some level of interest in Alabama between Huntsville, Birmingham, and Montgomery primarily, but really the entire state, to where they're going to become involved and we can form a new NARPM chapter within the next 2 years. So that's been my goal. And when I joined NARPM, the first thing I did was find a successful chapter, which was consistently winning every other year, because that's as much as you could win for large chapter of the year, which was Atlanta. And I got plugged into the membership in 2012, started on leadership in 2013, came all the way up through the ranks, was the 2017 president of that chapter, which is the largest NARPM chapter, local chapter. We have just under 300 members in that chapter, and learn from those guys. I mean, we have people in there that are managing 10 properties to 5,000 properties. And you talked about scalability. One of the guys we had on our property management summit panel, David Lightfritz, with Atlantic Property Management, he's got about, he's currently sitting around 900 doors and 950 doors or so. But at one point they grew, they had about 200 and a little, we'll call it 250 for the sake of numbers, but it was 200 and something doors. And he got some large clients in, and within a 12-month period, they added 2,000 doors. If you can imagine the scaling nightmare of that. And he learned the value of, some of it was painful, but toward the end of it, he learned the value of utilizing virtual assistants, which we've been talking about. And he even mentioned on the panel, which we'll have a podcast episode to replay this summit. It was really well done. But he talked about, if he had known about virtual assistants when he did that transition, that scaling process, he wouldn't have lost nights of sleep and years off of his life trying to sort through that, because that's the painful piece. When you land the business, you land that keeper of the fish, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we got it. So now we got to scale up for it real quick and get ready. And then all the while you're learning the nuances of your client. They're learning your nuances. So just making it work, and then making it work within the confines of your business. And that's not always an easy task, but I would say just the people that have poured into me and caused me to focus in on the business and not just get the work done, but how to best get the work done and most efficiently, on my systems, my policies, my procedures, and my income streams, and identifying additional income streams. One of those was a great idea we've been doing for 4 years now, but one of the property management firms and owners of that in Atlanta was actually Robert Gilstrap's idea, but multifamily's been doing it for a while. But he's like, why can't we do this and put it into single family, which was pet rent? And so adding that pet rent in, and then they're doing some other ideas that have taken it a step further to where management companies are retaining, self-insuring against pet damage. And a lot of that stuff's catching a lot of traction right now. And just the number of pet owners applying for your properties is just off the charts. I don't really care where you are in the U.S., but it's happening. And the old days of, no, I don't want to pet my property, you really have to rethink that strategy, because you're cutting out such a large percentage of your,
what is it, like 70% right now?
Yeah, it's pretty
It's
close.
like there's like 70% of the rental market has pets, and if you just say no pets, no pets,
really limiting yourself.
okay, well, good luck.
Yes,
sorry. That's one of those things that I was talking about earlier. Is you don't know things that you don't know.
Right.
That's kind of one of those pieces that I was talking about earlier. If you don't know how to handle that, because you don't even know that you don't know that, and then you get plugged in with NARPM and they tell you things like, oh, have y'all run into someone saying that, and you're like, I didn't even know. What?
My next level challenge for our business is really to draw down and focus in on the metrics of profitability per door, because it's truly not about the number of doors you manage. It's more about the profitability you have in each of those doors that makes you successful. Because you can, back to your strategy, I'll take anything and everything. You can get into those situations, and probably tying in on your example to where you're paying money to actually have that property in your management portfolio, which is not a smart move. So just knowing what that looks like. But one of the other things that I'd like to add is, as we grow and keeping a consistent product and level of service.
That was the point I was making. You got to keep a standard.
So one of the things that we do is we have a monthly mastermind call for our managers, and the premise of that is I'll come up with an agenda, and we'll have old and new business, and we'll have each office gives a brief to everybody else, typically between an hour and a half phone call. But the purpose of that is to bring up any pain points that they're having, and as a group, we solve that together and come up with the best practice and solution for that, and then we implement it as policy across the platform. So that really helps us stay consistent. It's not perfect, but it definitely keeps us in tune. And we just, we jump on Zoom. Everybody's got cameras, and we all just hash it all out, and everybody enjoys themselves. And we try to just foster that environment of team throughout our branches.
You guys, there's like so much I have down in my notes that we're out of time, so I can't get into this. So we might have to schedule another one. But I don't want to leave everyone hanging if they do have like questions or want to connect with you. What are the best ways for people to follow you or connect with you?
Well, I'm going to let my co-host here actually just throw us out there. So
I mean, honestly, okay. Before I do shameless plug, listen to our podcast. That's the point. If there's information that we piqued your interest on, we have our own podcast. It's called Profitable Powerhouse Properties with the AHI Group. We are on iTunes. We're on Podbean, which is where we're hosted from, and then that spreads out to essentially all the podcatchers that there are. I mean, wherever you got. I haven't specifically put us on Stitcher. So I don't think we're on Stitcher, but we're on Google.
It's relatively new. We've been doing it since April 1st. And we release a new episode about once a week. So we're starting to develop a following, but it's fun. A really good contact piece for both of us that distributes to both of us would be podcast@ahiproperties.com. And just throw your question out there. We're quick to get back to you and happy to share.
And most of those, the podcast is geared toward the investor, but the stuff that we talk about, the points that we hit on are so relevant to someone trying to build a property management firm. I mean, all of that still is going to hit in that same.
Yeah, it's best practices.
It's best practices all around.
The premise of it is outward facing toward the investor, but it's coming at it from a property management perspective.
Awesome.
And how to avoid pitfalls as an investor and stuff that you probably no one's told you that you should be told as you get into the business of buying real estate for buy and hold strategy. So.
And the more you know about, in my opinion, the more you can get into your client's mind, which is the investor for a lot of us, that investor that's going to bring us in a portfolio or bring us in houses here and there. And, the more you can get into that mindset or where they're at and how they're thinking, the better you can get in front of issues that they're going to have, the better you can bring them solutions before they have problems. And the more you can come off as you just know more. You have that expertise, and that you sound like, oh, of course I should use you. Of course you're the best property manager for the area. You're who I need to talk to because you're educated on this. Yeah, so continued education is
really
so
the crazy piece of this was, so my partner and I did a guest appearance on a podcast, our very first one. It's been a few years ago now, but they split it into two parts. And out of that podcast, we signed 52 new properties out of both episodes. So that piqued my interest. And then Jonathan actually had podcast experience when he came in. So it was like no brainer. And then now it's morphed into a business development piece, but also client education piece.
That's
so huge. The beauty of it is, so we've got, 13, 14 episodes out there. And we were just meeting with some clients on Monday, and they're like, I listened to every episode. I've got questions on a couple things, but I've listened to every episode. So I mean, they walk in, they don't know our faces, but they're like, I know your voice. I know your voice.
Yeah.
I know what you look like in a cartoon version. Yeah. You're Jonathan, right?
I would say in my mind, podcast has kind of replaced, on some level, podcast has replaced the blog.
Oh, for sure.
And then obviously video podcast or video blogging is relevant too. But I think it's a resource piece. And when people dive into your website and they see you've got podcasts and episodes they can dial in on and learn a little bit about how you conduct yourselves, how do you know what the heck you're doing?
Yeah.
That's refreshing when people listen to it and then they call you up and it's like, wow, that was pretty good.
Well, you guys are also an example of how to do this. So in the notes, when we post this, we'll link out to your podcast. I'm going to throw your email in there too. So if you start getting, you might start getting some emails from folks curious and talking to you. Also, I'll put a link to AHI Properties.
Thank you.
To everyone, go visit
AHIproperties.com. Yeah, you can find our podcast through there as well.
Yep.
Perfect.
So, but yeah, this has been fun. I really,
Thank you
my
so
thing
much.
is, I love talking about what we love to do. So
yeah,
it's fun.
We'll have to set
That's
up
what we do
another
when we're not
one
even
to
at
dig
work.
into like. I have so many questions written down that we didn't even get into, so we'll have to book another one. Until then,
We'll be here.
For everyone else, tune back in next week. Actually, next week we're meeting with Deb Newell, Property Management Masterminding.
We know
I'm
Deb.
sure you guys know her.
Love Deb.
That'll be
Love
Thursday,
Deb.
the 27th, 1 p.m. Pacific time. So tune in for that. If anyone is interested in learning more about Latchel, go to latchel.com and you can register for next week's session by following the channel here on Crowdcast or clicking the event page to register for next week. Thanks, everyone. Jonathan, Bryan, thank you so much. You guys have an awesome rest of your day.
Hey, thanks, man.
See ya.